Welcome everybody. You are tuned into Pitchside Weekly, my weekly soccer show where I just break down everything that I've been watching over the past week and maybe didn't have time to make a video on. Today we're going to talk about the FA Cup and a huge game between Liverpool and Manchester United, and Arsenal crashing out of the cup as well. Later on in the video, we'll also talk about the US Women's National Team friendlies and the debut from Catarina Macario. Exciting times and plenty to talk about, so stay with me on Pitchside with Parker.
Oh yeah. I'm not the type of brother to play with. See a lot of people acting like all ball players sounding like haters. We the young kings of this generation,
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Pitchside with Parker. Glad to have you here for another Pitchside Weekly. And be sure to hit a like on this video before we even get started. Also, of course, the giveaway is still going on. It will be going on the rest of this week, and then I will pick a winner. So, if you haven't done that just yet, you have a chance to win a $25 Visa gift card. One of them has already been claimed. The other one still up for grabs. So, check out the video that I will link right here. Very simple directions if you want to be a part of that. It literally doesn't take anything but about 30 seconds on your computer or on your phone, and you can be a part of the giveaway. Also, just a quick channel or personal update, I suppose, because I know that it's only really the real ones who watch these videos. They don't get a ton of views, but if you're watching this, I'm sure you're one of those people and you probably care. I've just been really busy because I've been getting some things sorted out. There's a lot of good things to come soon. We will be looking at a much upgraded setup in as few as about 2 weeks time, so I'm really excited for that. And you know, these may be some of the last few videos you're seeing me record in the car, so I'm really happy about that. If the videos are a little sporadic or they kind of only drop on one day or something, that's just because that's when I had the time. I've been very busy recently just trying to get all that stuff sorted out. So anyway, thanks for sticking with me through that and still clicking on this video. But yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to start off by talking about the two big FA Cup fixtures at the weekend, the two that included Premier League sides facing off against each other. And the huge game of the weekend was on Sunday, Liverpool and United playing for the second time in a week, and United coming out with the 3-2 win over Liverpool. This turned out to be a super exciting game. I mean, Liverpool scored first through Mohamed Salah, and then Man United fought hard to come back. Then it was 2-2. Then Bruno scores the winner on the free kick. Goalkeeper side against Alisson. What a free kick. Just phenomenal from Bruno Fernandes. Also, for all the people out there who think I still hate Bruno Fernandes, I never even hated him in the first place, okay? That video that's on my channel that got so many views and so many dislikes and so many comments, y'all didn't read the description. Y'all didn't understand that the point of that video is that you can make an agenda against anybody, whether you like them or not. It's a really easy thing to do. I have actually always been a fan of Bruno Fernandes, and I've really enjoyed watching him play this season because he has been a spark plug for United. And he showed it again in this game against Liverpool. Came off the bench, scored the free kick, got them the win. And although this game turned out to be really exciting, I would honestly make the case that it wasn't that different from the 0-0 when these two teams played in the Premier League. It's just that both teams executed a little bit better. In the 0-0, United had plenty of chances on the counter. They just routinely made the wrong pass or ended up in an offside position or whatever the case may be. In this game, they were just a lot more clinical on the counter. Marcus Rashford was excellent in this one. He's just a shining star. And for the games like the 0-0 where he doesn't have his best game, he's going to have games like this as well. He's already proven that he can show up in the biggest moments. He's done it in the Champions League. He's done it in the Premier League. What a player. What a guy. You can't help but love him. But if I'm being honest, I don't want to focus on Manchester United that much because I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot more about them. I've already talked about them a lot on this channel, and I'm getting a little sick of the United fans already. They seem to be really encouraged about how this is all going, and I don't blame them. I'm starting to think, in fact, that maybe it is going to be United's year. But I'm just going to hold off on that conversation because the moment I even mentioned that on Twitter, already got plenty of people in my mentions talking on nonsense. So instead, let's talk about Liverpool. Now, I know the injuries are a serious issue. They cloud the judgment in everything that we can say about Liverpool because as many legit criticisms as you might have of Klopp, of Liverpool as a whole, you're always going to be thinking, well, maybe it's just the injuries. Maybe if they had everybody, this wouldn't be happening. They've now gone 5 games in the league without a win. Burnley, of course, broke their unbelievable home record, which finished second longest streak in Premier League history and ended, I think, at 66 games. They haven't scored in 4 games, I think, in the Premier League, which is like the first time that's happened in a long time. There's a lot of troublesome signs right now for Liverpool. The word that keeps popping into my head every time I think about this Liverpool team, whether it be its fans, its players, its manager, especially Jurgen Klopp, is insecurity. Last year, they dominated everybody. And a lot of people, myself included, were of the opinion that they had an immense amount of luck go their way. And unfortunately, because of the way that it went, Liverpool fans will always be able to say, well, we won by so much, you can't say anything. Nobody else has done this before. How could you deny the greatness? Yeah. Luck played a big part of it. And the Liverpool fans know that too. And the way that you know that is with their reaction now. All of a sudden, people are cracking down. They're saying, oh, this system was too over-reliant on Trent and Andy Robertson. Oh, this was always a problem. Oh, this was always going to happen. They're not really blaming it on the injuries. They're starting to really heap down on Klopp and on the system and on the fact that when players don't stay fit, you can't just press everybody for 90 minutes and win games. When your strikers and your forwards go out of form, you can't just play long balls over the top and expect them to score every time. These are the systems that Liverpool had in place, and they're starting to crack this season, partly because of the lack of personnel, but also just partly because of simple law of averages and the fact that sometimes you're going to whip in 45 crosses in a game and nobody's going to get on the end of them. And when you leave your fullbacks up, making those crosses the entire game, the other team is going to have some success on the counter, especially a team like Manchester United, who are devastating when they are in form. So I just think it's funny, the amount of insecurity that I've seen, especially from Jurgen Klopp in a lot of his interviews and from a lot of the Liverpool fans recently. You're kind of exposing yourself. You really knew that this was the case last year as well. It's just that the results went your way. A lot of VAR went your way, and nobody got hurt. And look, it takes that to win, so I can't even hate, but it just shows that there's always been flaws in this system. It's just now that they're being exposed. However, this could still all turn around for Liverpool. And a lot of people think that if they just sign a center back, and then potentially a few of these players get back fit, especially like Jota, that could eventually propel them back into the title challenge. But as I'm looking at it, there's only 6 days left in the transfer window. So who exactly are Liverpool going to sign? I haven't heard any names really being floated around too tough. Maybe that means they're just doing some things behind the scene and eventually they're just going to pop up and say, oh, we signed Upamecano or something crazy like that. But I haven't really even seen many rumors. And while I think a center back would help them out, certainly I think it's an area Liverpool clearly need to address. I don't really think that that's going to propel them back into a title race this season. I think whether or not they get a center back, they're going to need to fix a lot more things offensively in order to actually compete and keep up with United and Manchester City. And hell, even Leicester. Even a team like West Ham is a couple points off Liverpool right now. I mean, the top of the table is very crowded. And with the struggles that we've seen recently from Liverpool, it's hard to see them shifting out of that and ending up at the top. The other big FA Cup tie to talk about as well was, in fact, the Arsenal game against Southampton. 1-0 to the Saints. It was a Gabriel own goal from Arsenal. I figured I'd at least toss this in because I didn't make a review for this game. It was at 7 in the morning. I was dead tired by the time the game was over, and I fell asleep. Partly because the game put me to sleep, and also partly because it was so early. So forgive me for not making a video, but the simple thought for me is I just don't understand what the plan was for Mikel Arteta. He made 7 changes from the Premier League side. So we went with like a half rotated but half not rotated squad. Willian, Xhaka, and El Neni was the midfield. What do you expect to win with that? Genuinely, what could go well if that's the midfield 3? What are you getting out of that? There's no creativity. There's no pace. There's very little passing ability. They just all lose the ball. It doesn't really matter who you got around them. But if you are in fact playing Nketiah and Pepe in his current form around them, it's going to look ugly, man. I just didn't understand because the FA Cup is Arsenal's thing. This is our cup. It's literally called the Emirates Cup. We own this thing. We're the holders. You should be going out to win this cup regardless, but especially this year when Arsenal's sitting 10th or 11th in the table. Clearly the league is out of the question. You've got a difficult matchup in the Europa League. You're already out of the League Cup. This is what you have to play for. Mikel Arteta, how do you, of all people, not understand this? Because I promise you, if you had not won the FA Cup last year, you would have been sacked months ago. I really cannot get into the mindset of what the hell Arteta was thinking before this game. Southampton, to put it simply, is a better team than Arsenal this year. And then when you play their full squad against only half of Arsenal's first team squad, that's obviously how the game is going to go. They didn't even have to try particularly hard or do anything particularly special. Like, it was an own goal. It wasn't even a beautiful goal that they scored. But it was just that easy because Arsenal were never going to score. And once that went in, it was no problem for them to defend that lead and play on the counter. And that's a story that we've heard over and over this season about Arsenal. So, yeah, I'll pretty much leave it there. That was just really disappointing for me as an Arsenal fan. This was what we had left to play for, and now we're out of it. But hey, go on Southampton, honestly. Like, I want to see them do well in this cup. They have a fantastic team. I think Hasenhüttl has the chops to potentially make a cup run, and you know, they've got game winners. They've got Danny Ings. I could see him doing almost like what Aubameyang did last year and just carrying and scoring some amazing goals. And I could see them being that type of team that can make a run in the FA Cup. So I'll root for them. They actually took it seriously, so they deserve to go further. It's that simple. And besides Arsenal, the other thing last week that happened that I did want to make a video about but just didn't quite have the time was the U.S. women's national team and the 2 friendlies that took place against Colombia. These were, in a lot of ways, pretty meaningless. I mean, credit to Colombia, man. Like, they held their own as much as they could. They had to go with a lineup of people that all played in the domestic league, so it wasn't even their best selection that they had available. And they held firm. Like, it could have been a lot worse. Sepulveda in goal made a lot of good saves, and between those 2 games, it would have looked a lot different if she wasn't back there. But yeah, USA, they won 4-0 and then 6-0. And I think the questions that we always have to ask of ourselves after these games are, what did we learn about this team? And I just can't help but think that we didn't learn a whole lot. Like, clearly the players who had been playing for their teams looked fit, and they looked better. The players who had not been playing didn't look quite as good. Regardless, no matter who you put out when it's USA versus Colombia, especially a shorthanded Colombia team, USA is going to win. So I don't know how much this really helped them. It's a little bit of a warm-up heading into the She Believes Cup, which will be next month, I believe. And then I suppose you're getting cranked up for the Olympics. But is the Olympics really going to happen? There were some reports that came out this week that Japan was already starting to think about securing the next available bid for the Olympics to be in Tokyo, assuming that it could get canceled this year. And I tweeted this exact thing. Like I said before the first friendly, I don't know why we're playing this game. They invited fans to the stadium, which seems wildly irresponsible. They're flying in players from Colombia to interact with these USA players who've been all across the map. You're talking about Mewis, who came from England, and there was COVID outbreaks with Manchester City. You're talking about players from the NWSL. Obviously, America is a hotspot. You're talking about players from another country in Colombia. And they're all coming together into one of the most densely populated areas of the COVID outbreak in Florida. It just felt really irresponsible to me. But hey, if the games are on, I suppose you're going to watch them. I mean, it wasn't my decision to play them. So the great bright spot that came out of all of this was Catarina Macario. I've talked about her in a bunch of videos before. I haven't been this excited about a Team USA player in a long time. I just love the way that she plays with such a freedom and such an expression and such a control of the game that is just incredibly rare for somebody her age. I mean, she stepped on the field in her debut and she became the focal point of the game immediately. Everything went through her for the US as soon as she got on the field in that first friendly. She's able to play like a false 9, kind of withdrawn forward role. She's a phenomenal passer. She's got great vision, and she knows exactly what she's doing on the field. She makes all the other players on the field around her better. And that is something incredibly valuable, especially for a USA team where there is so much attacking and midfield talent. She can be that spot that just plays in the middle of all of them and connects the dots. That is an invaluable presence to have on your team, and the USA will be much better for it when she does see her time on the field. Now, I'll be honest, I was working during the second friendly, so I didn't actually get to see the game which she started, But I did see the goal that she scored, which was a great finish on the cross from Ali Krieger. So I was just excited that she scored in that game and did it in the 4th minute. I mean, she clearly had a point to prove. Yeah, she announced herself to the world in kind of the best fashion that she could. And then with as much positives as there were a few negatives, of course, as there always are surrounding the women's national team, especially when it comes to the national anthem. And there's no way that I could talk about the games without talking about this. Specifically, the most disappointing thing being a couple of players that during the NWSL Challenge Cup were willing to kneel for the national anthem and who now have decided that apparently that is beyond them and that we've moved past the need for a message for social justice. It was really illuminating this week listening to Catarina Macario, who went on the, I think it was called Diaspora United podcast, which literally just debuted, and their first episode was with her. And they broke down really what it was like for Kaya as a black player in the NWSL during the Challenge Cup, and how essentially the way that she was treated and the way that her teammates acted and her teams kind of failed to support her really drove her out of the game. A lot of it was based around the whole kneeling for the national anthem and players not being willing to do that, and the way that the media treats especially these white athletes who don't really get questioned for their stances on this, and when they change their behavior, like Julie Ertz, for instance. She was somebody who literally, that picture of her and Casey Short last summer was just plastered everywhere, used in every promotional campaign, and it was their way of sharing black trauma and then promoting Julie Ertz for being there with her and kneeling and having her hand on her shoulder and being with her in prayer, and all this just for Ertz to now be standing for the national anthem and apparently changing her view on that. Or was it really ever her view in the first place if she wants to stand now? Look, I am the type of person who kind of feels like kneeling has been watered down at this point, if that makes any sense. The message has not been lost. Everybody, I think, understands why the kneeling is happening, but in a way, because it's so commonplace now, it's not like you're taking that big of a stance. That was actually one of the points that Catarina Macario raised on that podcast, was basically, this isn't even asking you to do anything too crazy. This is the bare minimum at this point, that you will kneel with your teammates. And they're not even willing to do that. The reaction of the coaches, the reaction of the media is to protect and coddle the white players while completely ignoring the way that it looks to the black players and the way that it feels for the black players to not feel supported within their own team and not even have that questioned at all, while everybody is wearing Black Lives Matter shirts and there's all this messaging, and the teams seem to fully be taking this on board as a marketing policy, but they don't actually provide that support for their players. Couple that with the fact that some of the best players on the women's national team are consistently played out of position. Crystal Dunn, Midge Purse. It's a very upsetting climate, and I completely understand why people are really fed up with some of those actions right now. And what I kept reflecting on after I had listened to that podcast, which I definitely would recommend, I'll put the picture and everything up right here, is that it took a podcast of two black people who wanted to talk about soccer, which that is something that is everywhere in this country, by the way. Soccer is not just a white sport, although it looks that way in the U.S., and if you only watch the U.S. women's national team, that's certainly how it would look. And if you looked in a media room for any of these games, that's definitely how it would look. It's not the case, but they are not given the opportunities throughout the mainstream media to voice their opinions on this, to be a pundit, to have opinions, and especially ones that clash with such a big entity that is the USWNT. But it took them starting their own podcast and literally within the first episode giving space for a black player to truly speak how they felt. Would Catarina Macario have given this interview to a white podcaster or journalist or whatever? Would she have done it on the Julie Foudy podcast, which has been so widely promoted, by the U.S. women's soccer community? No. She wouldn't have. But it's so sad that literally they had to create their own space just to tell this one story, which is so evident. It's evident at the highest level. It's evident on all the NWSL teams. It just shows that the sore lack of representation affects the game in so many different ways, and that we need more avenues for black players especially to be able to get these stories out and really truly be able to say how they feel without too much fear of repercussion. And one of the reasons that she was able to do that is because she did leave the game and she's not on a team anymore, and she doesn't have to think about what would the team react to me giving this interview, or how would my teammates react to me giving this interview. So yeah, that was the negatives that took place over this international window. Not to end on the most sour note, but it's the reality, and it's a conversation that, as much as we want to talk about these other things, you've got the emergence of this young black superstar in Catarina Macario. She may end up facing a lot of these things as well. And so, as much as they want to promote her now, what have they been doing with these other black players? And it's an important part of the conversation. So yeah, we chatted about a whole lot today. If you have thoughts on any of the previous, be sure to leave that in the comments. I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm always responsive down there, and I really do appreciate the comments. So, leave one if you got some thoughts. If not, at the very least, like this video. If you made it this far, I mean, come on. I doubt many people are left watching, but at least like the video for me. And subscribe to the channel if you're new. So yeah, that's all for this one. I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.